Hi, everybody. I'm glad to welcome you here. We're here with Dr. Nancy Booker. Dr. Nancy Booker is a professor at the Aga Khan University in Nairobi and dean of its Graduate School of Media and Communication. Before becoming dean there, she was head of the Department of Journalism and Communication at Multimedia University of Kenya and has also taught at Daystar University and ABC University in Liberia. She has worked at Kenya's national broadcaster, the KBC, and at NTV, and has studied at Harvard. So welcome. We're very glad to have you here today. One of the things we try and get across is that one of the things you need to know about doing research is what do you not know? And Barbara and I realize that there are a lot of things we don't know about the world of journalism outside of the US that we've basically worked virtually our whole careers in the US. So we're very glad to get a chance to speak with someone as distinguished as you and from the position you're in about how things look in other parts of the world, since so many of our students are from all over the globe. I think generally these courses get people from more than 150 countries. And I understand that your school draws from a pretty wide range of people across East Africa, perhaps beyond. So maybe we'll start by just telling us a little bit about your working background and with research and what kind of questions you've come across that students wonder about.
Thank you so much, Joan and Barbara. It's really an honor to join you. It's evening time in Nairobi and the weather is quite chilly. So as I was saying earlier, I've had a chance to not only practice journalism, but also to teach and to serve as an adjudicator and a mediator of media-related disputes, when government is not happy about some of the stories that have been published or members of the public, or, there is intramedia, disputes. And that was truly a remarkable, tour of duty. And, it's in some of those instances that you appreciate the importance of research, because in mediating on disputes, in adjudicating, you're looking at what our legal friends like calling, what's been set, what's the jurisprudence, and you're relying a lot on previous cases to be able to, make a determination or a ruling. And it's in some of those instances that you actually then appreciate the value of research beyond just journalism work. But within, the journalism space and the work that I have done, research helps a lot in providing the much needed data or the reasons behind what we do. So two of the research projects that I have been involved in quite closely that then inform a lot of media practice or journalism practice is one that looked at the news consumption habits of millennials and Gen Zs across East Africa. So what are those things that they want to consume? Where are they consuming, their news from? And what are the things that, they prioritize that, are of interest to them? And a very recent one that we launched this year was looking at the state of the women in media in East Africa. So who's writing the stories? What are the numbers of women in the newsrooms? How many times are they covered? How frequently are they covered? And how many times do they even make, the headline stories, whether you're looking at print, television, or the digital platforms? And these are important because if you're going to make any policy decisions within newsrooms, and you need data to be able to support that. If you're going to make any content decisions in the newsroom, then you need data to be able to support that. And I'll give you an example. As a result of the news consumption study of millennials and Gen Zs in East Africa, one of the media houses in Kenya, has started a financial literacy program for, the young people, because they're very keen on finances, not just how they can spend what they have now, but how they can make money and how they can save and invest it. So that's as a result of research that we have done.
I think what we are talking about is editorial research. So when you're doing that adjudicating, the background research you do to defend your story or to inform a story. I do think, obviously, the research that we do as a discipline is extremely important. But I'm interested in how you teach your students, how faculty teaches students how to make sure that stories are informed with data, the correct experts. What access do you have to academic papers to also inform your story, the kind of research that's being done, and possibly hold accountable the very officials that, might take issue with some of the stuff that's reported?
That's a great question, Barbara. So one of the realities is that, research is one of those components of journalism that for the longest time has not had a huge investment, whether it's in terms of the people that are working, on a research desk or who support journalists in the work that they're doing, or just the significance of research in informing, editorial decision making. So a lot of the students that come to us and realize that for a long time, many of the students that came to us, were coming from very siloed arrangements. So you're either a print journalist or a TV journalist or a radio journalist. One of the things that we've tried to do over the years is to, work so that our students graduating from our program can work across multiple platforms. And part of that then has meant that we then orient them to be able to see, for example, if you're working in radio or in television, that there is a place for, some of the stories that have been published in print and some of the libraries or, the digital spaces where some of this content has been stored or publications have been stored to inform, the research work that they're doing for their content. So also being able to show them the reason as to why they need to be able to depend on each other, irrespective of whatever platform they're working, they're working on. Many media houses don't have research desks or dedicated research desks. That is changing, or is trying to change, because it's what is going to be the differentiating factor today. I'll give you an example. We've had protests in Kenya, for those that have been following, and the stories are breaking on social media platforms. You just need to go on X to find, what's happening. If you followed, many of our young protesters were saying, just, make sure that you have your smartphone with you. So a lot of this was being broken to us on the go. So you ask yourself, why then do you need a media organization or a news media organization, if that is breaking? You need that for context, to be able to, for some sort of in-depth reporting and analysis. For that to happen, then there has to be an element of research. These are not the first protests that have happened in this country. There have been protests before. And if you do not know where to find that information of where it's been documented and how many people died, for example, in the protests that happened in this country last year, or, the cycle that with every election cycle, there have been protests. So here's some historical research that then needs to happen for one to be able to understand, So in the absence of research desks, in some of the media houses, they have dedicated research desks, and very few of them have that. But in many of the media houses, a journalist who has the knowledge, to be able to seek and to find, a little bit more information beyond just what they're seeing at face value, then tends to have an upper hand. Their reporting is clearly different. They're able to move away from, sensational headlines or, sensational stories to a lot more analysis and a lot more in-depth reporting in the sort of work that they're doing. In the context that we operate in, I think, for those that are, in established economies such as the US, a lot of this information can be available, at the touch of a button. So you go online and you can go onto the internet and find that information readily. But we realize that in most of the African economies, internet penetration might not be as high, so you're not going to click a button to find that information. But two, that, you're only able to find what has been published or uploaded, So if that information is not available, online, then even if you find it, even if you're trying to find it, you're not going to find it. If you're using AI, for example, and you ask for certain prompts around data in Africa, you're not likely to find it because that data has not been, either it's not been researched, or even if it's been researched, it's not been uploaded. And as a result of that, it's not been converted into digital formats, and so you're not going to access it. So what has happened is that for many of our journalism students, it's one understanding that in as much as we are in the East Africa region, because our students are coming from very, very different media houses. There are those who come from well-established media houses. There are those who are coming from community media houses, where they have one computer. They might not even have a smartphone, and there are those who do not even have any of that. So it's building within them the research skills, the questions that you ask, the prompts that then would lead them to find out a little more, and employing both, primary and what I would call secondary methods of data. So research is not just about, going onto your computer to find what's available online. It's walking to the next person, who might be much older, has spent a lot more time in the newsroom, has some context and has some historical background that then helps you in telling a story. It might mean, going out and just talking to people in the communities and finding, multiple voices so that then you're able to corroborate the information that you're finding. So if person X says this, what's person Y saying and what's person Z saying about this, this particular event? And are there, instances where you can actually draw conclusions based on what they're saying? But the other platform that I think has become quite useful is WhatsApp. So we use WhatsApp a lot in this part of the economy, and there's a lot of information that is shared in that space. In a lot of the journalism groups that I am privileged to be part of, there's whenever there is a new information, or there is something that the source thinks that we need to know about, they will share it there. So
just to be clear, so using WhatsApp sort of as a collaborative tool among journalists who may be in different media houses or may be in the same place, but it's not like going onto Facebook and seeing what random people are posting. It's a tool for collaboration within a designated group where you feel like there's some level of trust.
Yes. So there are WhatsApp groups within, there are different WhatsApp groups. So there are WhatsApp groups that are formed for, say, journalists who work in a particular media organization. So it becomes a place where, it's a sounding board. It's a place where you can ask questions or ask people to provide you with leads on who they should speak to, or whether there are any documents that perhaps they need to look at. But, outside of a particular media organization, there are also WhatsApp groups that bring together journalists from across different media houses. And there are many of those, so again, those act as sounding boards. And I think what I like about them is that there's a lot of camaraderie. It's not, people don't look at themselves as you work for this media house, you work for the Nation Media Group, and you work for the Standard, or you work for, Citizen or Royal Media Services. And so we're not going to share this information. If you have a question, if you're looking for some leads, if you're going to a particular location and you're asking, who knows somebody that I can speak to, or who has the contact of this person, people are always very, very helpful. They might not share that information there, but you'll see comments like, please check. I've sent you a message privately. I've sent you their contacts privately. Feel free to reach out and let me know whether you need any more information. So through those, platforms, then they're able to, journalists are able to engage quite robustly, and they're using this beyond just, the connection. And, we use WhatsApp groups for a lot of things here. We use them whenever we have, birthdays or weddings or funerals, to raise funds towards that. But it's interesting to see that it's not just used for social engagement. It's also used as a tool for, the profession, and to be able to do research that then informs the work that journalists are doing.
You've touched on a bunch of the themes, several things we've been trying to lay a foundation for in the course of the idea that research is not just about big investigative projects, but even covering breaking news like these protests, you can add some depth and context by taking the time to get a little bit here and a little bit there of the history or other things. And about adaptability, that wherever, you talk about media houses, a few of them having research desks, it's almost disappeared even in the US. Essentially every journalist around the world should think of herself or himself as being on her own. But then that means, what tools can I put in my toolbox? What other people can I turn to? So, and this is a big theme in, I've read some descriptions of your mission and your vision for the school you're leading now, and about the transition to digital media and adaptability, both between platforms and between different kinds of, video, podcasts. And so just is research a through line that people have to be able to, knock on that door no matter which door they're going through?
Absolutely. So in all our courses, there's a research piece to it, but not just, the nuts and bolts of it, but also the ethics of research. I think now more than ever, it's critical that, even as you're seeking new knowledge or finding knowledge, that there has to be ethics and integrity that underpins that. So that is something that we are very critical about in our offerings. It cuts across our programs, but we also have courses that are dedicated specifically for research. One of the things that we require students to do to complete their program is that in one program, that's a Master of Arts in Digital Journalism, they actually complete a thesis. And then in the Executive Masters in Media Leadership and Innovation, they complete a project. Now, in the first master's program, it's both a capstone project and a thesis. And then in the Executive Masters in Media Leadership and Innovation, it's a project. And one of the things that we do is that we ask the students to also then be able to see how they can apply the research knowledge that they're getting, which, from the research clinics and the research classes, to their everyday journalism work, So, for example, simple things like how do you sample? If you're doing something as simple as vox pops, how do you ensure that these vox pops are not just from one particular location? so that you avoid the whole concept of groupthink, but diversifying the different voices, asking yourself, whose voice is missing? Is this representative of what, say, people in Nairobi think about the finance bill, for example? And then what is the ethics about how we conduct this? So it's something as granular as that to as complex as I'm working on an investigative piece that is going to take me 2 to 3 months to complete. What are the questions that I'm going to ask? How do I ensure that in my reporting or in my research that I'm not, invading the privacy of private citizens? That I'm not causing more hurt and pain, that I'm not intruding into grief and shock, all those things, across the spectrum. And that is something that we teach at the school.
I mean, from your position on the Media Council, I would guess that you've come across some cases where some ethical questions have arisen, and just sort of what are areas where people go astray in their research, or what are the lines that people have to be aware of not wanting to cross? Is there some really terrible story you can tell us from a complaint that was filed there?
Yes. So, there are many. Let me see which one I can narrow it down to. But I think overall, most of the complaints that were filed before the commission during the time that I served raised questions around the accuracy of the reporting. So missed facts or misrepresentation of certain facts. I remember there was a story around the governor of central bank in this country, and the journalist was actually citing information that they had not verified or did not even provide an opportunity for the governor's office to respond. And then only later on to establish that was not, the story was not factual. And then in one instance, there's a journalist who got information from a particular site about the country's debt. And, only for this information to come out as having not been verified or truthful, but then reporting it as fact. We had a complaint that was filed by a father of a child who had ovarian cancer, and the child was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, I think, at the age of 4 months. And the father was essentially an absentee father in this child's life. But when the Standard Group, which is a media house that published the story, ran with the story, and the father saw it, he came and filed a complaint that his consent had not been sought as a parent, and that he should have had an opportunity to decide whether the child should have been featured in the way that they did, because when you provide all forms of identity, even if you do not provide the child's name, then people can trace back, who's the parent, where do they live, and all that sort of thing. And he was essentially complaining around, the invasion of privacy for his child, never mind that the mother had consented. So there was a lot that needed to be done. One, from a research point of view, is even just understanding what does the Children's Act in this country talk about? Whose consent, do you need? Is the consent of one parent sufficient? In the case where two parents are living, even if they're estranged, how do you handle that? So that was a critical point where if the journalists had just spent a little bit more time, then they would have done perhaps a different story altogether. But also just, researching around, different cultures and how we, because culture also plays a role in sometimes, what you find and what you do not find. So how do we talk about, certain illnesses or ailments, without necessarily raising questions about, the state of the parents? Because when the story was published, there was a lot of feedback, both positive and negative feedback, from those that are educated and understand. This is how you can seek help. This is how you might seek help. But from many of the people in that community, because it's a rural community, questions around, have you been bewitched, or something like that. And coming back to the mother, and there was quite a bit of backlash. So if you then understand the context in which you're operating from a research point of view, then your reporting is a lot more. You're not distorting the facts, but you're reporting with a little bit more sensitivity, because you've gone with a story, you're right, but this woman has to go back and live amongst these people in a community that then is looking at her differently and, sometimes chastising her for reasons beyond her control. It's her child who has an ailment, and it's the reality, but it's how then the community responds to that's an issue. So through a lot of the cases that we mediated, or especially those that we adjudicated, we are able to bring back those to classrooms and to use those to just help our students see, ask questions like what was missing, what other questions should have been asked, what other people perhaps would they have talked to, and how would we tell a more complete story, if we did some extra research and spend just a little bit more time, on the stories that we're writing.
I mean, I think a wonderful model for fact-checking would be to imagine, if I'm brought up before this tribunal, what have I done to show that I'm sure about this fact, I'm sure about that fact? Because, we all get the anxiety about, we've published a story, when am I going to get that phone call saying, did you check this? But to think about it in that sort of more formal way might be, a good way of scaring students into doing the work they need to do. You mentioned that you do professional development work with working journalists and people who are, in their middle of their career, and just sort of wondering how they might approach things differently, or how teaching them might be different, or what their needs are of somebody who's actually not just a student looking forward to doing it, but somebody who's facing these challenges every day.
So we have a very unique situation. All our students in the master's program are practicing journalists. So they come to night school and weekend school, and then during the day they are back in the newsroom. So it's usually a very interesting dynamic, because they sometimes come to class and say, wait a minute, what you people were telling us yesterday doesn't apply. I was on my desk, and clearly this is way out of touch of what we're actually doing. So we see that even in our academic programs. The difference with the professional development, because you see with the academic programs, it's a journey, and you have an opportunity to come back and correct. Students have an opportunity to unlearn some of the things that they have done, and you can almost see that journey. With professional development, because many of these are 3-day courses, maximum, 5 days, it's ensuring that you focus on skills as much as possible. And, sometimes there's really not so much time to be able to, go into why we do what we do. It is, these are the skills, this is how you use them, this is how you apply them. A lot of those who come into professional development courses are looking for the skill that they can go and use immediately. A lot of our students are looking for the skills, but they also want to understand the reasons behind why they do what they do. And there's usually quite a bit of robust conversation that happens in the classroom, where they're not only learning from their teachers, but they're also learning from themselves. I'll give you an example. One of the courses that we run as a professional development course, but it's mainly drawing from academic programs, is data journalism. So when the students come into that class, it is giving them the different tools that they can use. It's helping them see how they can, mine data from different sources. But a critical piece is also helping them see how they can disaggregate data to be able to tell very different stories. So again, just very recently, a recent example, when we talk about percentages of Kenyans who are happy that, for example, the finance bill was rejected, if you just disaggregated that data from a gender perspective, of those percentages, how many are women, how many are men, and then, how many, what's the workforce like in Kenya? What's the percentage of women who work? What's the percentage of men who work? Because that then has implications on who pays the taxes. But what are some of those things in the finance bill, for example, that were critical for the women folk and those that then directly impact men? So when you're raising taxes, for example, on Pampers for children, who makes those decisions about who buys what Pampers? So disaggregating that data so that then you're able to see that it's telling a different story. So those are some of the things that we do, with our professional development courses.
Sounds like an amazing school. It really does. Doing God's work.
Thank you. Truly, it's God's work.
Well, and we see in your country right now just how important it is to have people who are able to work all sides of the question, to be out on the street, to be understanding the policy question and looking at the demographics as well. So,
and giving insight. Yeah, that mindset to ask questions. I love it.
Yeah. But also in a situation that is that's uncertain, I think one of the things that research does is also point you to patterns or predictions. So people are looking for that. We reject the finance bill, and it's been rejected. But what are the implications of that? Has this happened in other jurisdictions? We've had risings or protests in different parts of the world. Where have those ended up? So you're also able to, just helping the students see how, research comes in and just helping them, provide people towards some predictions. And that then helps so that people can make, hopefully informed decisions about what their next day is gonna look like.
Well, that's the goal: informed decisions, informed populace, and it's people like you and your program who do this great work that are going to help the next generation and the current generation of journalists to do that. So listen, we really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for this terrific conversation, and best of luck with everything you do.
Thank you. Thank you very, very, very much. And I wish you all the best with your classes, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you.
Okay,
I'm going to stay in touch. Bye, Dr. Booker.
Bye.